So the student loan crisis is a big subject in the USA, a bit less in the UK, where fees are a bit lower. And I mean, I don't think the university is a good system, and I still believe that PhDs have their value. But when it comes to universities, I mean, you're just studying things that are already in books, and you're essentially buying a degree certificate. So what do you think is wrong with the universities? What's your view?
Well, it's not things in books. It's things online. The way that education started was where you would have a very clever person who was the only one who could read and write and who had access to books and could teach you things. And the reason that school terms ended up the way they are, you have a long summer holiday because the children were needed to work in the peasants' farms in the field to bring in the harvest. And you'd have a long one at Christmas, a fairly long one, because, of course, they needed to prepare themselves to worship for the birth of our Lord Jesus Christ. And you'd have another one at Easter, which was also to do with the religious celebration of the crucifixion. And so that all came about in the 16 and 1700s. But we still have it now. Our holidays are still the same, but you don't need to go to school. The wise man that you used to find in school is all over the internet. The greatest women scientists, the greatest male professors, the greatest young geniuses, the most wonderful child prodigies, they're all over YouTube. You don't have to go to school. You don't need to buy any textbooks. It's all online. School has become a state-funded babysitting service for working parents that teaches kids almost nothing about what they need to know when they are in the greater outside world. They're saturated with things like algebra and Shakespeare when they ought to be learning about how their bodies work, where their pancreas is, how it's nice to be kind to other people, and your purpose in being alive, which is to create enjoyment for others. And when you go to university, it's even worse. When I used to go to the communist countries back in the 60s, they'd brag about the fact that half their people went to university. When I came back to British universities and told this fact in lectures, people laughed and said, how ridiculous. I mean, what percentage of people is academic? 2%? 5%? 8%? I don't know. But it's not 50%. Now, Tony Blair once said, I want 50% of young people to go to university. And in 2019, it happened. 50.2% of young people went straight to university. And the parents think they go to broaden their minds, they go to be educated, they'll get a degree which will guarantee them a job. That's all complete tosh from top to bottom. The reason students go to university is because it's the most painless way of leaving home. If you go to Oxford and you get a nice little job in a company, a subject you really like, you're on a fast management stream, you've got a car, you've got overseas holidays, you're earning money, and when you tell your parents this is your plan, they will say, oh, our little one is leaving home. What have we done to hurt you? Why are you walking out on us? Now, go to Oxford Brookes University instead. That's nothing to do with Oxford University, but your parents won't know that. So you apply, you get accepted, and you say to your parents, not, I'm going on a management training course in Oxford, but I'm going to university at Oxford. Then they're not sad. They throw their little hands up with glee. Going to university, first in the family. They ring Gran. Going to university, Oxford. Isn't it wonderful? Do the other thing, and Gran will never speak to you again. You walked out on your parents and went to Oxford and had a bedsit. The difference is that in 3 years' time, you've got money in the bank and a car, you may well be married, and you might have kids on the way. The other poor sucker has spent 3 years in university, getting laid, getting high, getting drunk, playing loud music all night, and is now £60,000 in debt and only owns a rusting bicycle and doesn't have a job. There is utterly no point in most people going to university. Most of the jobs that important people in our lives have nothing to do with universities. Mentors and business people, company directors, designers, web designers, all of these, I mean, you don't need, even estate agents, you don't need a degree to do these jobs. You'd be far better off out in the outside world, enjoying yourself, earning money and creating a career rather than hiding in university. And the results in universities really beg a belief. It's, of course, you've got to be trained to be a doctor or a vet or an architect. That's no problem. But kids just going and doing aimless Mickey Mouse degrees and paying through the nose for the privilege and ending up heavily in debt is utterly iniquitous. And it doesn't do them any mental benefit at all. except that it's delayed the day when you had to get a job. So by the time you're 21 or 22, you're suddenly faced with the real world. Now, I'd let people leave school at 15 if they wanted and come back when they felt like it and wanted to learn something more. Older kids, youngsters quite like school because it's good fun. But teenagers hate school, by and large, can't stand it. And it's because they're never taught anything relevant. We need radically to revise our syllabus. For example, teachers ban mobile phones in class. No. You should welcome the mobile phone in class and teach the little buggers how to use it. That's the whole point of going to school. You should start the whole day. You should start the school week by listening to what's high in the charts and looking at the bands and the people who made the music and how the music was made. You should start every day by looking at the news websites and checking up on what the Telegraph and the Times and the Mail and the Sun have to say about the news. That's the way to get kids enthused with the world, not sitting them in class and making them learn all this rubbish they have to learn. No, school is a babysitting service, and university is a convenient way of postponing the day when you have to go and get a job. But they are out of date. As it is, we have 21st century children being taught by 20th century adults on a syllabus derived from the 19th century and a timetable derived from the 18th century. It is high time school was radically changed. And as for universities, most of them just con the kids into giving them money and teach them very little of any use at all. Unless you need to go, don't go. Get out in the world, get a job, enjoy yourself. I mean, I went to university. I never wanted to. I thought it was a bad idea. But in the summer of 1959, I was persuaded that getting a degree would be a really neat thing to do. So I went to university. It was a very irregular way of going. I was already at that time a newspaper columnist, and I was playing twice a week in a nightclub playing rhythm and blues piano. So I was earning some money, and I was quite well known before I was a student. And so I went to university, and I found it the most stultifying experience. There was no intellectualism. There was no mind broadening. You just had to learn stuff and reproduce it for exams. This is mostly stuff about fungi and bacteria that I'd learned when I was 15 and 16 anyway. So in my second year, I just stopped going and I never graduated. The highest qualification that I had in orthodox academia would be 2 A-levels, botany and zoology. I sat chemistry 3 times and failed it each time. That's pretty bad, really. But no, get out in the world and enjoy yourself. Don't follow my example. Please don't try this at home. What I did was completely irresponsible, really badly thought out, and should have failed miserably. The fact that it managed to succeed is pure chance, I'm sure. But go to university if you must. Otherwise, get out into the world, make yourself a career, earn some money, and enjoy life.